Hello friends, it has been quite a while since I've filmed a video for you. I'm going to zoom in a little, just a little, so that you can see my pores and stuff. Is that better? Okay. So I am Leslie and this is Cancer Confessions. I filmed this vlog because I have metastatic breast cancer and I have had it will be 8 years in March since I was diagnosed. Some people have been following me for a long while as there we go, as I have been living with this disease and have followed my ups and downs and chemo changes and tests and procedures. First bit of news, I updated in my very last video from 6 months ago or 7 months ago. We moved from Chicago to Tennessee. We've lived in Tennessee before and loved it, and we've moved back because life's too short to not live somewhere you love. So we've moved. We've been here since April. In the process of moving, I had a stroke last March and was doing well. Got moved in, got unboxed, got set up in our home. We live in the area of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. And then I had a bilateral pleurodesis, which is because my cancer is in my lungs, I get a lot of fluid and did not want to have any more thoracentesis, which is where they stick a needle in and drain the fluid because it comes right back after a couple of days. And so for years I've just been living with the fluid in my lungs and the shortness of breath. And so in July I went in and had one lung operated on to rough up and try to restore the pleura of my lung, the lining of my lung. And then they wait a couple of days and they do the second lung. And I was doing really well for approximately 6 weeks. And then the fluid came back in both lungs. And that was a bummer. So that really massive 1 week hospital stay, really traumatic surgery did not work. And but I had to try. I had to do something to see if I could live without fluid in my lungs. And there is an option called a Pleurex catheter. You can hear my dogs barking because the mailman's in the front of the house. So try to ignore the background noise. And I just don't feel like that's a good option for me because of the risk of infection, and most likely once they give me a Pleurex catheter to drain the fluid, I will have it for the rest of my life. And I don't want to live with a device coming out of my body. And it would only fix one lung, not both. So that was in July, and we knew it had not been a successful surgery somewhere around August. And then in October, I was in the kitchen with my daughter, and she said, "Mom, something's wrong with you. You're not talking correctly. Your words are slurred." And she got my butt in the car and took me to the hospital, and I was having a stroke, a second stroke. At that time, they did a brain MRI, and they said, on the right parietal lobe that I had my previous stroke last March, and I was having one on my left parietal lobe. But then they said, there's a little spot in the back of your brain, and we don't want to call it a stroke because it's not consistent with how a stroke looks. But we don't want to call it metastasis. And it's really, really small. So we're just going to watch it. Which I was kind of cool with because I wasn't in imminent danger. I wasn't having any symptoms that linked with the spot. So just to shorten the story and go through the major points, I changed my oncologist because sometimes you need to swipe right or swipe left. You either like somebody or you don't. And I did not dislike my oncologist. I was just not receiving the same standard of care that I had previously received from other oncologists. And I had gotten quite spoiled and wanted to be receiving cutting edge medication and, have somebody talk to me like I know what I'm going through as a cancer patient. So I changed to Vanderbilt, and I had a wonderful doctor there. But she was a research doctor developing cancer medication and treatments, and was more interested in having me as a person participating in her clinical trials. And we reached a point in my treatment where it was determined that Ibrance was no longer working for me. And that was when she recommended that I participate in a study where I wouldn't know if I was receiving the medication. And that was just too much of a gamble for me because I would want to know I'm on the actual medication, to know if it's working and to know that I'm improving. So I said, thank you, next. And she recommended that I leave Vanderbilt and go back to Tennessee Oncology, and gave me a recommendation of an oncologist that I am currently with. So that brings you all the way up to today. So today, my current oncologist had recommended baseline scans for her to compare against the ones that I had when I had my stroke in October and the scans that I've received between October and now. And when she did that MRI 2 weeks ago, she said, you have this little spot, and they're not calling it metastasis. But they are saying on the report, the radiologist is saying it is a possible metastasis. And it appears to have grown since the previous MRI of my brain in October. And that could be that I twitched during the scan, or, they did something wrong that made it blurry. But I was not satisfied with that. If I've got something in my brain, you need to name it so that either I know it's, a scar tissue or something non-cancer related, so that I'm not going to worry about it. Or B, you need to name it and say it's a Mets so I can attack it like I attack any enemy in my body and try to get rid of it. So I suggested to my current oncologist that since we are not willing to name it because the way it reacts on a CT scan or an MRI is not the same as it would react on a PET scan, which means it glows if it's cancer and it doesn't if it's not cancer. I said, it's been a little while since I've had a PET scan and I really want one. And, so she ordered one. And that will happen on the 14th, which is Happy Valentine's Day. So in the meantime, I have been to a neurologist that I've had an appointment with for about 6 weeks because it took some, configuring to get in with him. And we wanted to make sure I had my MRI prior to seeing him so he could see the MRI. Good thing I did, because he looked at my previous scans that I had from my stroke in Chicago in March and at my scans from now when I had my stroke in October, and then the recent one of my brain MRI that I had 2 weeks ago. And he said, I always get this saying wrong, so correct me in the comments below if you know how the saying goes. Something like, if you hear hoofbeats, it's a horse, unless it's a zebra, or something like that. Well, we know it's not a horse. By horse, I mean stroke, because it's not at all consistent with how a stroke looks. And in addition, it's more consistent with a zebra, meaning metastasis to the brain, because of it's not a smooth, round, even circle or shape in my brain. It's a jagged little, pokey looking spot. The spot is about the size of a pea. And as far as I know, it's not causing me any symptoms, but I still have speech problems where I get words confused or can't remember a word or have to replace words because I can't recall the word I'm trying to say. And also I have writing problems where, say I'm doing a grocery list and I'm writing the word potato, and I'm writing the word and I'm seeing the word and I realize that I have not put the P and the O at the beginning of the word, and I have to go back and edit that one word on paper and add it. So I'm realizing that I am not writing it the way I'm thinking about it in my brain, and that only happens when I see the word on paper. After speaking with my neurologist yesterday, he said that this is in fact part of the stroke that I had in October, and that it is because it damaged the part of my brain that deals with vocabulary and speaking and reading. And so there's that, which is completely handleable and creates a lot of opportunity for family jokes. The current situation with the brain mets is I am on a chemotherapy called Verzenio, and this is one that crosses the blood-brain barrier and treats brain metastasis, which is, I suspect, why my current oncologist, even though she didn't want to give it a name, put me on this specific medication, because she was aware of this unnameable spot, which is what we're calling it, the pea-sized metastasis. Its name is spot. So when you hear me refer to spot, that's what I'm talking about. So we are continuing me on Verzenio to allow the chemo to shrink the metastasis. In addition to that, I have the PET scan on the 14th, which will allow us to see if this short while, I've been on it for 5 weeks, to see if this short while I've been on it has allowed it to shrink at all. However, after the 14th, if it has not shrunk, my oncologist, will order another brain MRI. Whatever that brain MRI comes back as, if it's the same size or has shown growth, at that point we will be doing, I'm trying to remember what is called, it's gamma knife radiation to the spot in my brain. We're not there yet. We'll talk about that when we get to that point, and I'm being informed by my neurologist what that entails and when that will happen. But the plan is if it doesn't shrink or if it grows despite chemo, we will do radiation. So that catches you up. I also have 2 spots on my ribs that weren't there before, and they do hurt. They are causing me discomfort. I was aware of them before the test. The bone scan 2 weeks ago confirmed that there was something there that was causing me to hurt. I'm just going to trust in my chemotherapy at this point. I am taking more medication for pain, and I'm comfortable. So that's it. That's bringing you from 6 months ago in Chicago to now in Tennessee with all of the health and the chemo changes. And I hope this information is helping you or helps somebody that you know and love. If you have any questions or suggestions or want to tell me the actual story of the zebra horse thing, because I always get it messed up, please post in the comments below. As always, you can follow me on Facebook because I am public, or you can follow me on YouTube. It's all Leslie's Cancer Confessions or Leslie Bullis at facebook.com. I thank you so much for taking time out of your day to follow me and just share this little piece of my story. I hope you have a great day and a great week, and I look forward to updating you a little bit more consistently than every 6 months. We'll see you soon. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.